are on 3 floors. Downstairs is where most of our collection is, but you can start by here and going places, which kinds of gives you an overall view of the different types of vehicles, luxury vehicles, purpose-driven vehicles that you'd use on city streets, taxi cabs, fire carriages, grocers, and more. We have a little carriage shop upstairs that used to be owned by a family, the Graves family. We have a Studebaker collection. So take a look around, and when you have questions, please let us know.
Thank you. Sleighs were the principal means of transport over snowy roads. Many families owned sleighs, but not carriages, since the sleigh was less expensive, lacking the wheels, axles, and suspension system of a carriage. The name vis, French for face-to-face, describes the way passengers rode in this sleigh. Pretty cool. Market wagons carry produce from farms to urban markets and manufactured goods from factories to distant customers. Produce was typically stacked as high as possible and covered with a tarp secured by ropes. Sometimes the heavy laden wagons were carried on flatbed railroad cars or aboard ferries. This wagon was owned by G. Howland Lovett, a prosperous landowner in Bayside, Queens, Long Island. You see all the different carriages moving for the different years. Pretty cool. This would have been a taxi in the early 1800s, late 1800s to 1905, actually. This used to be the post office back in 1900 to 1910. This is the routes that Long Island had all the carriages go before interstates and highways and roads were built properly, paved. These were probably dirt. This before paved roads. Before paved roads, long before automobiles, journeys by land took time, patience, and nerve. This is why many found going by water to be the fastest way to travel on Long Island in the early 1800s. 3 main roads with familiar names, North, Middle, and South Country roads, ran across Long Island by the early 19th century, but the villages where they connected were few and far between. on a half-day journey between Huntington and Smithtown in 1804, traveler Timothy Dwight took note of the forested hills and valleys filled with oak, chestnut, and cherry trees as far as he could see.
Racing vehicles.
So this was race cars before race cars?
They started to develop the wheels and the engines, and then turned it into like within 150 years, 200 years, cars, and then the horses. That became a second business. So yeah, like $2 billion racetracks that they built, and people showed up, and they didn't think then that it would turn into like now with
It's pretty cool.
People would bet on it and become like worth billions of dollars. Just showing up for fun, watching the races.
So they used to race with horses on a wagon before they had race cars. This is like a chariot. It's very old, in the 1700s. 1760 to 80. The seat is suspended between two wheels and attached to a horse was the quintessential vehicle of the early carriage era. Some historians see the source of this carriage design as the Egyptian chariot. This gig is said to have been driven by Marquis de Lafayette. It originally belonged to the Brickenoff family of Chittagong, New York.
He had they shut down his motor park.
Interesting.
Only cars, going across, and that's from Suffolk County. And then, it was interfering with the farmland, so people complained and it got shut down, turned into 25A, like a commuter parkway system that's brings people to the city and back in exchange for canceling his taxes.
This is the rich people's vehicle. That's pretty cool.
So yeah, 20,000, and which would be like $500,000 worth now.
Wow. That's a lot.
So this was $20,000 back in 1875 to 1885. This was like $1 million back in the day. That's pretty cool. And only one horse pulled this back in the day. Yep.
It hold 45 people could fit on the bus.
So this was a bus before buses. Cool.
miles short of Hampton Bays, where the railroad tracks were approached at an oblique angle. A freight train was approaching from behind them, the whistle blowing for the crossing. To the horses, this was a challenge, and the race was on. Well rested and grained, the horses were letting nothing pass them. When Grandfather saw that he could not stop them without a pileup, due to the ditches on either side, he lashed them, yelling for everyone to hang on tight. The horses were of fine metal and entered the race with a will. They crossed the tracks with but yards to spare in front of the locomotive, nor were they slowed until entering the town. Then the coachman said, "Mr. Hoyt, Demarest sure knows how to build a carriage." Grandfather answered, "Ben, he does."
This was the fire truck back in the day. Pretty cool. I used to drive this one around Central Park back in the day. Pretty cool. This was the one that most people got because it's the cheapest one.
In the late 1800s, America was on a roll. Carriages, wagons, and carts were vital to American life and industry. Carriage makers and shops flourished in towns across America. But a different kind of horsepower would eventually change everything. Early on in the 20th century, most carriage factories became idle. Businesses closed their doors, unable to make the transition to a society ruled by the automobile. Few owners kept the contents of their shops, but one astonishing collection remains: the Graves Brothers Carriage Shop. Until it was dismantled in 2003, it was one of the last intact small-town carriage manufacturers in the country.
Well, it held a lot of memories. That was one reason that my father and my grandfather liked to have it here.
The Graves shop was located in Williamsburg, Massachusetts. Williamsburg was a typical mill town. It had grown up on the banks of the Mill River, a source of power for dozens of local businesses, producing a wide array of goods. Around the 1840s, local farmer Norman Graves joined the manufacturing boom, producing wooden pen holders, rakes, and a few buggies. By the 1870s, Graves, along with sons Willis and Fred, had opened a carriage business in the center of Williamsburg, turning out buggies, market wagons, and sleighs. Like other small-town businesses, the Graves' shop operated on a system of barter and exchange, as well as cash. The Graves' shop also accepted trade-ins, second-hand vehicles as partial payment for new ones. Business was good. Then, in 1874, the water power that drove the local mills and shops became a killer. On May 16th, after a rainy spring, the giant earthenwork dam controlling the flow of the Mill River gave way. 600 million gallons of water burst downstream, sweeping away nearly everything in its path. The hero of the disaster was Collins Graves, a cousin of the carriage-making Graveses, who drove his milk wagon at breakneck speed down the valley shouting, "A flood is coming! Run for your lives!" 139 people were killed, and factories and houses crushed. Norman Graves and his family escaped, but their business was destroyed. The Graveses built a new shop, powered at first by steam and then by electricity, and soon were doing a brisk trade in the new location. In 1889, Norman died, and it was renamed Graves Brothers Carriage Makers. The shop made a variety of different vehicles: runabouts, two-seaters, as well as four-seaters for larger families and people headed to church or summer outings. Also, dump carts and buggies. Here in the museum, you can see the workings and machines of the shop, in their day powered through belts and pulleys and human sweat.
This machine here was used to take and make slats for the buggies and the dump carts. This is what we call a bandsaw. It's a very versatile machine. But you want to be very careful when you're using a bandsaw, is to make sure that your hands don't slip. Because if they do, you're going to take off 2, 3, or 4 fingers. This is our drill press. It was used for drilling holes through iron. To get power to this drill press, the chains go from one pulley to the other here. It's in neutral now, and you bring it over, and then it turns. It runs this belt down here. It runs your drill press.
Around 1915, keeping up with a changing market, the Graves family began to move into automotive and gasoline sales, Ford Model Ts and Nashes, and starting in 1932, Chevrolets. Well into the 20th century, the family continued to use the original building for parts storage, for turning out truck bodies, and even making furniture. But by mid-century, the shop had become a time capsule, a silent testament to a past industrial era.
Here was a business that people took pride in building, pride in selling it, and they did a good job in doing it. And there was a lot of sentiment that went into this building of carriages and of truck bodies. And I am the 4th generation, and I still think about it. And I hope I never forget it.
This is one of the older post offices from back in the day.
Good morning, Mr. Samus.
Morning, Miss Sherry.
I heard the train coming in, and I wondered if you've sorted the morning mail yet.
I have it right here for you, and your Port Jefferson Times is on the top of the pile. I see the front page has a picture of President Theodore Roosevelt.
It sure is nice to have a Long Islander down there in our nation's capital. Makes all of us feel important.
Indeed, he is such a bully fellow, as he likes to say.
Did you get to read the Stony Brook Museum Times, Mr. Samus? It says here, Sarah Maria and Captain Delbert talked July next Saturday in the Park Home for the RA.
I didn't, but I knew it arrived. It's David Davis who owns that ship. Is here just
It's a general store right here. And this is the Stony Brook train station from back in the day. These are old fire truck carriages. It's pretty cool. It's a steam pumper.
Crossbroad trembling, the hatless driver leaning forward with arms out straight and a trail of sparks and smoke behind. Another whiz and the long ladder wagon across with firemen slinging on their flapping coats, while behind in its wake are borne many small crazed boys who could no more keep from running than the alarm bell at the engine house could keep from ringing when the policeman.
This is the type of roads that they used to have in the 1800s and early 1900s. For the carriages. Mainly the 1800s. This is a police patrol wagon right here. This is a trolley that was pulled by horses. That one back there brought oil to people.
Session in New York City. It's one of the vehicles that was there. Yeah, in 1865, that was train carried coffee to developed states, the United States, and that probably 5 or 10 years. I guess it was like contributed by the Good Steer, the original owners. I guess the family like owned the restaurant over time. They just closed after 5 years. But, same location. But yeah, I guess this is how they started. Either it was from a collection or how they got into the restaurant industry and delivering like door to door, and this is part of their family's life.
So this is the meat wagon.
Yeah. The inside of the windows.
This is a gypsy wagon, the original van life right here. So this is like the original van life.
Well, yeah, fortune telling parlors. Yeah, so it was it's like the nomads.
The original nomads, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I guess. Certain ones can be converted. You know, you can convert like a trailer or like RV into one with the paint and the windows. You know.
Like an Airstream.
It's
The original.
these are some. Yeah, from Chicago. First, like food truck.
So this is the first food truck.
Yeah, like the first time anyone ever tried popcorn was at the World's Fair in 1863. This is 1893. This is all like delivery service. They had a physical store and they traveled down the street. Everyone ran and they got their groceries right from the trucks and like these vans, the wagons, and it wasn't like today where it's the entire delivery system, like service industry is like all over, like nationwide, like international.
So this was local only, not international. Not
New York City, market wagons went from exactly
local delivery truck for food.
East Williston. This is Henry Willis made this cart with the best shock absorption. The sound would travel through and go right here, and then there's no horse motion. They couldn't. The travel, the wind field, the vibrations from the road, the horses traveling. It was the smoother trips with these ones. Sofa shapes. Summer. Yeah. Do like billboards and like for marketing, so like painted on the sleigh.
So this was a gift from Rockefeller?
Yeah, this was 1830s, and it was repainted in 1875 years later. So this was like.
So this is the wagon from the Oregon Trail?
Yeah. This, I know they have like field trips. I didn't know that they moved like all of them. Brewster ones. Most of them owned by Cornelius Vanderbilt. This is his mansion in
Vanderbilt, huh?
Manhattan. Yeah, he had a mansion in Manhattan. Rhode Island. Each family member had their own property. This one had a. There's a odometer on this one. It's in the dashboard. But this would be probably like around here on the back, and this is it's 1,650. It's about $42,000, and now 15 years later, so it's probably a lot of these are either like 60 to 100,000 plus. You know, from royal families in England, they use these. This is where they kept the equipment. Stove and fireplace kept the metal from rusting and the leather from getting mildew on it. Independently, textiles, oyster shells. You know, that's where the Romans were made of there. And you know, window slides, carvings, textiles, and which they can never use again. This is ivory. That's what the inside was carved into.
Ivory.
Yeah, we actually used ivory for the inside of the wagons. The window slides and handles are made of ivory. That's like that.
Okay. This was to train the horses?
Yeah, it's a hand brake, handle brake. To when they're going downhill, so they don't crush the horses. It's you can sit up higher and step down if they need to, like engage the horses. Rooster boxes and the paints and the accessories. That's the oldest one in the building. It's Italy, 1700, and Bavaria. This line is from one piece of cardboard.
Carved wood?
Yeah, this line is from one tree log. I guess one piece of wood. It's
Cool.
and then that's from Italy. The driver sat there. He traveled this way. There's a seat between the wheels. That's where the servant sat, so it wasn't comfortable. That's the
Everything had gold on it?
all the like these ones. The horses has these were owned by these were owned by the Prince of Bavaria, the royal family. After World War I, so this was 1918, there was no one left to claim the carriages, so they just sat at their estate and collecting dust and survived the two world wars. Executive ties with the family, purchased them, brought them from Munich all the way to the United States, and did the state of Long Island. And 1966, it gave us a collection.
It's pretty cool.
Already born into wealth, and they had money, and because it was royalty, they was extreme decorating and very elaborate designs. All the Vanderbilts, you know, it was just earned money over time. You know, the banks and finances, steamboats, so it was they just American royalty, and then this was like the European royalty, so it shows the difference. Oh yeah, that's